Are you ready to give me your soul?
Sure.
He's Mike Birbiglia, and he's a writer. He's a director. He's an actor. He's a comedian. He even does one-man shows. He's got a new special, The Good Life, on Netflix. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But let me start with the one-man show. What is it about you that would gravitate toward the idea of a one-man show? What was in your childhood that would make you somebody who thinks he can pull off successfully and did a one-man show?
I did not mean to write a one-person show. I was trying to make movies this whole time. Like when I was in college, I studied screenwriting and playwriting. And at the end of college, I went to apply for all the jobs in screenwriting and realized that's not a thing.
So you failed your way into a one-man show.
Yeah. So in other words, like what happened was, so I did stand up because I was working the door at the Washington, D.C. Improv during college. And so I was seeing great comedians. I mean, Mitch Hedberg and David Tell and Brian Regan, Margaret Cho, and all these people. Like, I was getting to watch them for free because I was a door person. It was unbelievable. It's like amazing education. But one of the things I worked in the office, I was able to see the pay stubs of everybody. So you go, oh, this person's making a few $1,000s. The middle act is making $500. The MC's making $250. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, I can MC and try to make a living doing that. And so I drove my mom's station wagon around the country for a couple of years, and then it kind of became something. I got a couple specials on Comedy Central and all that, and then I circled back. And I was like, well, why don't I try to write a one-person play? Because I really love plays. I love movies. And so I kind of merged stand-up into a play, and that's what became Sleepwalk with Me, which was at the Bleecker Street Theater in 2008.
Well, that is an interesting thing about you. For those who don't know your sleepwalking tales, we will get to them. But let's drive through on your mother's car. There, you're doing what? You're just emceeing what? What are some of the sad or ridiculous places you're going to MC things, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life?
I had a spreadsheet of comedy club bookers across the country. And it was accumulated from other comedians and people who were trying to do the same thing. They'd say, oh, there's this booker in Louisiana, and they book a bunch of one-nighters in Louisiana and Texas. And there's someone who does a bunch of stuff in West Virginia and Ohio, and you could call them. And I would literally just call them every day. I was like a telemarketer. I was just, hey, I'm Mike Birbiglia. I'm a comedian. I could send you my tape. This is in the era of VHS cassettes. And so I would book myself for next to nothing, any place that would take me. And so a lot of times it would be one-nighters. Like I remember in my first show, I talked about how one night I was at like a restaurant called Fat Tuesdays, and I was backstage, which was the sidewalk of a strip mall, and the manager says to me, so you're going to go out and you're going to do 25 minutes. And I had probably like 10 minutes tops. And I turned around and I threw up on the sidewalk. And
like
then
while he's saying this to you?
He walked back in. I got really nervous, threw up on the sidewalk. To this day, I've heard that the headliner of that show tells the story from their perspective also. But it's probably funnier, but it's like, but I threw up on the sidewalk, and then I walked on stage. I probably did 5 minutes, and then I ran out of jokes and said, and now you're a headliner. And I brought him on. But I will say, like, I doing those gigs, and it was a lot of like colleges. It was a lot of like, one time I was performing in the center of like a walkathon for lupus, like an all-night walkathon, and I'm got a microphone. I'm trying to entertain people going around me, and I mean, it's so demoralizing, you know. But it was then, and it still is like what I want to do. Like this idea, like you guys were making jokes before we started about my notebook. Like everywhere I go, people see me with my notebook, and it's just all jokes and it's gibberish. But it's like the idea that that even if you're in a hell gig, you're in the center of a walkathon for lupus, or you're on the sidewalk of a strip mall throwing up, like, if the end result is I go on and I say to an audience some stuff I thought of and I wrote in my notebook, that's a pretty good job. You know what I mean?
It's a great
job.
job.
That's a good job. Even if it's terrible, it's pretty good.
The walkathon for lupus makes me sad, though the words together are funny.
They're funny, yeah.
This notebook, it's a pacifier for you?
Yeah. I get a lot of these. I get at hotels. So like this one, for example, is from Hotel St. Cecilia in Austin, Texas, when I stayed there recently. I love really nice notebooks. Like if you notice, it's got like a nice fabric to it.
I mean, it has to be a nice notebook. Your profession's in here. Like this is an obsessive compulsive gold mine of this is your career in here, or your next gig is in here.
Yeah. You could even say the career. It is. So it's all here, and then I've done, and I still do tough gigs. I mean, like it's always. I would say stand-up comedy is consistently demoralizing. Like it's unfailingly masochistic.
You've gotten good at failure, correct?
Yeah, pretty good at it. Because I don't feel it past the next hour or two. I feel like my old failures, the residue of it would stick with me for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. Now it's like, I do a hell gig. It doesn't quite go right. They don't quite get me. They don't know who I am. An hour later, I'm like with my daughter and we're playing Monopoly, and I'm like, this is great.
It sounds like what you're describing is the mixed martial artist who kicks the tree until his shin is calcified so much that he can get better at the pain of it.
That's right.
That's
what it is.
But it still takes an hour. You still suffer it for an hour, but you've been at it how long now?
20-something years, probably 27 or 28 years.
Okay, and you're saying it's consistently demoralizing.
Yeah.
It's a pursuit that has more failure in it than success.
Yeah, because I think what it is it's one of the rare art forms that is definitively trial and error. Stand-up comedy is you try a joke, it works. You try it again, you tweak it a different way. You try or you try a joke, it doesn't work. You either forget it forever, you cross it out, or you rethink what. You analyze, like, how did they take it in, and could I do it differently so that they would get it more?
I imagine, given what you're describing at the door of a club, the kinds of comedians that are coming through there, and given where it is that you went to school and your peers had a remarkable amount of success, that it would be hard for you not to be competing on success, and even if you were succeeding, not necessarily enjoy it as success because the people around you are also are climbing to places that you're surrounded by people who are legendary people.
Yeah. It was this very odd sort of. I think it's Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, maybe, about pockets of people who form, ice skaters, hockey players, and all the variables that create a grouping of people. So like in my college at Georgetown, I cast into the in my improv group, Nick Kroll, and then a year after I graduated, Nick Kroll cast John Mulaney, and then in the middle of all of this at college, Bradley Cooper was there in the plays. Jonah Nolan, the screenwriter and director, was in my classes. I mean, like, it was a pretty extraordinary group of people. So that's present, I would say.
Did you feel like you belonged?
Yeah, because it wasn't all at once. It wasn't like all those people experienced that level of success immediately. I feel like the first one that happened was actually Bradley Cooper, because he was older than us, and I didn't even know him, but he graduated and moved to New York, and then he was on the show Alias, or he moved here. I don't know where they shot that, but it was one of those things where I was like, he's on the show Alias. Like that was astonishing to me. The idea that anyone who went to our college and was in the plays we were watching would be on like a hit series is outrageous. But yeah, I think like that's, and I think John had that, Mulaney had that with me because he would visit me in New York and he would look at me and go like, oh, similar to me looking at the pay stubs of comedians at the DC Improv, I think he'd look at me and go, oh, Mike does this as his job. Like he just writes jokes and performs jokes. And he said that before too. I think there is something to watching someone do something who you feel a kinship with or similarity to, and then understanding like, oh yeah, I could do something like that.
You're driving around. You said years in your mother's car? Years?
Yeah, probably a couple of years, yeah. I started when I was 22, and yeah, I mean it was most of my 20s.
But in pursuit of a career, or are you a bit lost? Do your parents, who come from health and science, are they looking like they feel like you have the right path in mind?
No, my parents were not sold on this as a career at all. My dad is a retired neurologist. My mom's a retired nurse. My dad would say, maybe this comedy thing could parlay into advertising, and I would just be like, no, I think this is the thing, like this, and he was like, Michael, he would sort of fly off the handle sometimes. He'd be like, Michael, you need some goddamn reality testing. That's what he always said, reality testing, and he's not wrong. I mean, like what's funny is at the time I feel like I put a judgment on it, and in the sense of like, he didn't get me, he didn't understand me. And now, like, I'm a dad, my daughter's 11. Like, I have a better sense of like, oh, right, you're just trying to protect your
kids. He was just scared, and there's no money in what you were choosing. It's what would that reality test look like, though, when you imagine the game show in your mind? Like, is he the host of a show that is right. Reality test, and you come out and you think you're going to make a living cracking jokes?
That's right. No, I mean, early on, he said to me, I told him I was working at a comedy club, and he goes, comedy club? What do they do, strip? Because that was his only point of orientation was like long, he grew up in the 50s in Brooklyn, and it's like,
a God-fearing American goes to a club to see someone nude, not to see you talk.
That's right. Right, it was like, I feel like the only clubs where there were, in that era, I mean, that's what like Richard Pryor and all those people came up in. It was
dirty, tawdry places.
Yeah. They came up in like these kind of burlesque, kind of mixed arts. There wasn't such a thing as a comedy club. So I feel like that was the point. That was the point of view that my dad came from.
You forgive me for switching gears here, but you married a poet. That seems like a harder way to make a living than even comedy. Poetry seems like a real hard way to make a living.
As far as I can tell, there's no path. It's and it was, of course, it's actually what I wanted to do when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I always told people I want to be a poet or a comedian or the owner of a pizza restaurant where third graders could hang out. That was when I was third grade. And then seventh grade, I want to be a poet or a comedian or owner of a pizza restaurant where seventh graders can hang out, etc. And then I never became a poet, but then I married a poet. And she's fantastic. Sometimes we'll do a thing called Jokes and Poems, like at Joe's Pub sometimes, or even we've done it here at Largo in Los Angeles before, where it's just Jenny will do a poem, and then I'll do a joke that's riffing on what the poem is, and then she'll do a poem that's inspired by what I'm talking about. And it's fun. She's brilliant.
You wanting to be a poet, though, how does a kid, what does that look like growing up? You want to be poet, screenwriter. You failed your way into merely jokes because you had these noble ambitions about what writing was. That wasn't just making the guy who's 7 vodka tonics in chuckle in the corner.
Well, I think it's that your point of reference is when you're younger is just narrower. So for example, like when I was a kid, we would read poems. We would read, Shel Silverstein or Roald Dahl or something like that. And I go, oh, okay, I could do something along those lines. Because that was the closest thing to what we would read. And I would think, yeah, I could do that. And then when I was in high school, I went to see, it's good, my older brother took me to see Stephen Wright live at the Cape Cod Melody Tent. And there's all these like one-liner jokes. And I think I was 16, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. Because that made, I think at different phases, you're exposed to different types of expression.
Well, but to be exposed to him, that comedy, where it's not just that it's one-liners, but it's one-liners delivered in a character you've never seen before.
Yeah. It was shocking. It was a shock to the system.
And the 16-year-old in you... is just awed with discovery there on the idea that's...
Then I went and started writing in my notebook. Literally. I didn't know you could be a stand-up comedian. I didn't know anything. But I went home and I just wrote a lot of one-liner jokes in the spirit of Stephen Wright. And then it was when I was sophomore in college, I think I entered the funniest person on campus contest. And then I won. And one of the things that I got from that was one of the prizes was to perform at the Washington D.C. Improv, and it was just coincidentally I got to open for Dave Chappelle, who at the time was 24, headlining comedy clubs nationwide at 24, and was D.C. native. He had started, I think, at 15. And so that was really unbelievable. It was actually, I remember it really well because it was the year Half Baked came out. It was like the month Half Baked came out.
And so when do you start to feel something that feels like success? When do you feel like you're actually growing into your voice?
So I moved to New York. I was like living on my sister Gina's couch in Brooklyn for a little bit, and then I moved to like...
What's a little bit?
6 months or so, and then I spent another year in Astoria, Queens, like living on an air mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed, like, or dressers. Like I just had piles of clothes. It was ridiculous. And then there at the comic strip on the Upper East Side, there was a manager there who booked the show since the 70s, this guy named Lucian Hold. I don't know if you ever heard about this guy. But he had passed like Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, there's a lot of people who sort of came through there. And he took me under his wing and let me host a show every Sunday night at the comic strip. And it was a long show. It would be like start at 7 o'clock at night and it would go till like 1 a.m. And it would just be like 25 comics. So that was interesting because it was like I was able to like meet everybody. I mean, to this day, I feel like I run into people in New York who I just met from hosting this show. And then I got Montreal New Faces, which was kind of a big deal when I was like, I don't know, 23. And then Eddie Brill saw me from the Letterman show and said that he thinks that I had a shot to do the Letterman show, and then I did it like a year later.
How long was it before you were comfortable with your work being deeply personal?
It was somewhere in my 20s. I mean, I remember I had a joke. The first like personal joke I ever told was I said, my girlfriend is older than I am, so she's starting to get to the age where she's thinking about having kids, which is exciting because we're going to have to break up. And then I've decided I'm not going to have kids until I'm sure nothing else good can happen in my life. And it's so simple, right? Even now, it's like, it's pretty funny. And that was like, I wrote this 20-something years ago. It's like, there's something simple about, I'm thinking about this in real time, that there is no real joke, right? It's just altruism delivered in kind of a straightforward way, but simultaneously is unexpected. And so I think that was, I was I saw the audience reaction to that joke, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting, because I think that with like good stand-up, there's a cost. I think there's like, if you're opening up a piece of yourself, there's a cost. I think for the people around you, people you love, no one really wants you to do it. No one wants you to talk about them. And so it's, I think that was hard. But that was when it was in my mid-20s.
The cost. What is the cost?
I think the cost is everything is copy at a certain point. Everything is used. Even with the notebook, it's like I'm at breakfast and I'm like writing down things that are my thoughts, and it's like I could do that, or I could also live and not be documenting. It's really like it's a cataloging of your own existence, and then it's a combination of that, and then it's kind of divulging it to strangers. So there's a cost of that to you and people you're close to. But I think that the upside counterbalances it. I think the upside is high. Because I think that if you open up to audiences about how you really feel, or things that, there's the old expression, we're only as sick as our secrets. I think if you open up to an audience about your secrets, there's nothing more amazing than feeling close to complete and total strangers. Like, in some ways, that's like a profound idea. It's like there's like multiple ways to view the world. It's like you can view everyone when you're walking down the street, you can view everything as hostile, or you can view it as, well, they're just like me, I'm just like them. And I think that comedy, in some ways, is I'm like them, they're like me.
But what is the cost of what you're talking about, which is the compulsion, right?
Yeah.
This is a bit of an addiction. This is a magical book.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing here that you are always thinking about this in a way that can become so important that you miss all sorts of life events because you're present here in your work and yourself and your narcissism and the thing that makes you happy, and you're not wherever else you need to be. That is part of the cost.
Yeah, I have no answer.
But is there anything more, like, is at the ambition that comes into making your career this, is there anything more important than this? Of course, everyone can say family, but when you're not being present in family, it's at least in part because you're obsessing or thinking about yourself, your ambition, your work.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that I would say the only chink in the armor of that was having my daughter. She's 11. I would say since then, I started to figure out how to compartmentalize and block off 7 hours in a day and have that be the only time that I'm doing that. And then when I'm with her, I'm with her. So that is different.
I mean, that is what generally changes selfish people to unselfish people. When caring people, how's it changed you?
Well, it's just like, I would say it has forced me to become more deliberate and actually try to understand my own process so that I can figure out how to deliver as well or better with constraints.
More disciplined.
Yeah.
I would imagine that whatever the previous version of you was before marriage could be sloppy and consumed with just this, and so there doesn't have to be something that's disciplined.
100%. Yeah, and even like what was funny is like in the pandemic, I started doing my podcast, Working It Out, and I would work out jokes with other comedians. And that previously I had never considered doing that because comedians always view that as burning material. Like once people hear this, they'll never want to hear it again, and that joke is gone. And And because of the pandemic, no one was performing. I was like, well, I'll just try. Even if this burns this, then I'll write another hour. This will be the pandemic hour or whatever. But then what I found was in doing it, and the people who listen to the podcast actually come to the live shows, and they're interested in knowing how the jokes evolve. And so it's like, it's interesting how you I think sometimes we all underestimate comedy audiences, that they're actually, I think, often more savvy than we think they are.
Well, I was going to ask you about working it out, the specifics of what you're doing there, which is showing the innards of joke writing, and a lot of people are interested in how people who are funny come by they're funny. What do you think is the reason that what you're doing connects with your audience, if it can be assigned a broad definition for everybody? Like, where and how do you think you're connecting with your audience by what you decided to do with your podcast?
I think that it's possible that if you had a radio show or something in the 70s about the deconstruction of jokes, that it wouldn't have connected. I think there's something about 2026 where we've been marketed to so much, and we've seen so much art, so many TV shows, so many movies, so many comedy specials, that in some ways I think we're a little ahead of it at this point when we see anything. And, you go to see a magician, you're not even a magician, and you go, something's going to happen with that curtain. You know what I mean? And like, that's not even our profession. I think that's comedy's like that. I think we go to a comedy show and we go, oh, he's going to try and shock us with something that we can't even imagine. And I think sometimes what happens is when you deconstruct it for the audience, with the audience, they actually appreciate more when you do something that is surprising, because they didn't think they could be surprised, because they thought they knew everything.
How long were you sleepwalking before you decided to use sleepwalking as material? Because it seems like it would. I would assume that most people are fascinated by all that is happening in your sleep.
It's very strange. I wrote a draft of my one-person show, Sleepwalk with Me, while in the years when I was sleepwalking, but had not jumped through a second-story window sleepwalking, which eventually I did. And which, if this is sort of news to anyone, I wrote a book called Sleepwalk with Me. I made a movie called Sleepwalk with Me. I have a comedy album of that name. And so I was sleepwalking for probably since college or so, since I was like maybe 20. And I started writing this show, Sleepwalk with Me, and it was about living in denial, being in a relationship where I knew it was over and I didn't want to deal with it, doing stand-up comedy where you're kind of in denial of bombing with audiences, and then there's the metaphor of I had a sleepwalking issue and I was not seeing a doctor about it, etc. And then I was working on the show, and I was doing versions of it at Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York City. And then I was on the road at a series of colleges in Oregon and Washington State, and I was at a Walla Walla, Washington motel called La Quinta Inn, and then I jumped through a second-story window. It nearly killed me. I went back for like the 20-year anniversary of when it happened this past January, and I with a film crew, and I did a show, and I talked to the ER doctor who put stitches in my legs and took the glass out
mining the hell out of your malady. Just really just filling up that notebook with just this grotesque curiosity that people have about, what does this man do in his sleep?
You have to, though, right? Like 20-year anniversary, jumping through a second-story window and living to tell the story.
People are interested in this, for sure. It is human, and there would be all sorts of curiosities around it.
Yeah. And so anyway, I did a show, and but it was fascinating. It was this really unlikely outcome that I lived.
I want more details, though. So for the uninitiated, how do you come by sleepwalking, and what are the specifics of the things happening to you while sleepwalking that have nothing to do before we get to the second story window?
So I would have dreams, for example. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and I would have dreams that, there would be a hovering insect jackal in the bedroom, and I would jump on my bed in real life, and I would strike a karate pose, and I would say to my girlfriend, Abby, there's a jackal in the room. And she said, there's no jackal, go to bed. And I'd say, are you sure? And I would go to bed knowing there was a jackal. And this would happen a lot. I mean, and in hindsight, it's like really tied to anxiety and stress and also just a sleepwalking disorder I was later diagnosed with. And it got worse. So I remember one time I dreamt I was in the Olympics for some kind of like arbitrary event, like dustbustering. And they told me I got third place in the Dustbuster Olympics, and I stood up on the third place podium. And
congratulations,
thank you.
Bronze medalist of dustbusting.
And then the officials reconsidered, and they go, "No, actually, you got second place." I move over to the second place podium.
Promotion.
The second place podium is wobbling. I wake up, I'm falling off the top of probably like a table of this size, of this height, about a 3 foot, 4 foot table in our living room. Fall on the floor hard, like on top of what at the time the DVR was called TiVo. And you remember TiVo?
Yes.
It breaks the TiVo into pieces. My girlfriend wakes me up in the morning and she goes, Michael, what happened to the TiVo? I said, I got second place. And it's a long story. But I always say when I tell this story, I go, at that point, I thought maybe I should see a doctor. And then I thought maybe I'll eat dinner. And I went with dinner for years until, the event I referenced where I jumped through the window. But it really was denial, and also a certain degree of not facing something that was straight ahead of me. Like I was sleepwalking. I was going, this is not good. And yet I wasn't dealing with it.
Well, what was happening with the anxiety that you weren't dealing with, which is, I mean, there are two different things. There's the medical of the sleepwalking, but there's the metaphor. And the reason the one-man play was so widely regarded is because it had deeper themes than just the curiosity of sleepwalking. You were sleepwalking through life, and you're sleepwalking through your anxieties as well, correct?
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, getting up in the bed, karate, a jackal, floating jackal, that's not a sane person while he's not sleeping, right?
Right.
Like in terms of what his anxieties are doing to him.
No, I think I had an extraordinary amount of anxiety, and I think that, part of it, look, none of us, the eye can't see itself. It's, we can't ever fully understand ourselves or why we do things. But when I was about 20, I had a bladder tumor. I talk about this in Sleepwalk with Me. I had a bladder tumor, and I found out because I was driving home for Christmas break from college, and I pulled over at a rest stop, and there was blood in my pee, and I was like, this isn't good. And then I go in, and they did a cystoscopy. They put a camera through your penis to look into your bladder.
Can you please stop doing that with your arm and your hand? You're making me uncomfortable. I understand what you're saying is clear without the need for a pantomime.
No, the words actually
I got it. It's fine. You got it. And your general discomfort. Actually, do it more slowly.
So anyway, they saw a tumor, and they took it out, and they did a biopsy on it. It was a malignant tumor. So I had to go for, cystoscopy for years, every 3 months for years and years and years. And I do think there is something to this idea that when you are face to face with death at that young, it changes the way that you see everything, so I think, when I was in my 20s, I had the sense of I'm going to die soon. You know what I mean? So I got to get this career started, and you know what I mean? And am I in the right relationship? And if not, I got to get out of this. And I can't quite say it. And so I feel like I was dealing with a lot of that.
You said extraordinary anxiety. What does that mean? Can you, like, when you say the anxiety is extraordinary?
Yeah, for example, like I would have a hard time breathing, or I felt like I did. Like I would have shallow breathing, and then I would, you know, like we were saying, I would sleepwalk, and I would. I mean, I would work for hours. I mean, I would do, you know, I would do stand up or write until 3, 4 in the morning, and then I'd be up for a temp job, you know, answering the phone at like a pharmaceutical company at like 7. You know, so I was on very little sleep, and I had no idea what my own future had in store for me. So it was a strange time.
Can you walk me through the combination of your ambition with your anxiety? Because you're having, this is such a tough grind, driving around in your mother's car, the air mattress, all in pursuit of, am I going to be able to feed myself doing this? Have I invested too much in this thing that's crazy? Is everybody right that I shouldn't have done this? That it was my dad right that this is no way to make a living?
Yeah, and I think that I'm trying to think of how I'd put this. It's kind of like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When the Richard Dreyfuss character, he's like making the mashed potatoes into a formation.
I need to connect with a young audience, and you're referencing a 1977 movie.
I'm trying to think of it.
But there aren't any others like this.
So in Marty Supreme, no, I don't know. But I do think like there's something where if you see a thing, and if you see a thing for yourself, it's hard to unsee it, and so it can become an obsession. I think that's what happens.
With mortality?
No, I think like artistically. I think like what happened was, I was like, oh, you know, there's a. I had a sense where I was like, oh, I'm able to connect with audiences in such and such a way, and I need to do this right away. And so there was like an urgency to it, and I don't know any other way to describe it.
The way you're describing, though, an urgency based on I'm going to die soon.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know.
Do you lose these? Like, is there anxiety involved with the idea of something being in here that can't be retrieved if it's lost?
Yeah, I a little bit, but I think like I find that like I have so many notebooks and I have so many files open on my computer that my sense is always, even if I lost this, it wouldn't be that different from a typical Tuesday, in the sense that like I'm always misplacing. I have an office with a stack of these things. So it's like there's ideas in those I'm not using. But
do any of them get thrown out? Are you a hoarder? You're a hoarder of all of your jokes.
Yeah.
I can find all of your jokes somewhere in the house. Do the loved ones make fun of the room that these things are in, or is it?
No. I think it's respected, but it's
Well, it's got to be respected. It helps pay for things.
Sure.
The poetry business isn't going great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just telling you, it's a crazy career.
Yeah.
To choose to be a poet.
I know.
Like I come up with a crazier one in terms of this unlikelihood that anyone will pay you for this.
No, it's one of those things where all the people who are doing it, they gotta love it. You
still love this the way that you did at the beginning? Or do you know too much?
No, I think so. It's funny. I was doing like a new 45 minutes at the Comedy Cellar the other night because I hadn't done a proper new 45 since I filmed the Good Life special. And you do have that thing after you film a special where you go, all right, well, I might have another special in me, but I also might not. And there's really no way to know. And so that was like 2 nights ago, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good.
45 minutes of new material
Yeah.
since your last special.
Yeah.
So but that takes a long time. That takes how long? You've gotten this.
That was like 9 months.
So and that's a pretty refined process for you, correct? Like 9 months, you've gotten it pretty sharpened if you've got a fresh 45 off of your special.
Yeah, but yeah, 9 months is pretty good. But in this instance, I've been writing my next movie, my focus has been split on writing that.
You've described comedians as a special type of broken. What special type of broken are you?
I think that it's that we are able to be knocked down and then get up and then write about what it felt like to be knocked down and get back up in a way that doesn't make the audience feel bad. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty interesting skill.
I feel like I just broke you with that question.
That could be.
Because
I got back up though.
Because you say though that when your comfort with failure, the wry smile on your face when you talk about the despondence that is the failure, where you're sort of laughing at both the cruelty in it and the profession you've chosen, because you're like, a lot of despair here, and then you hit one out of the park every once in a while. But there's I'm swimming in their occasional successes. Obviously, if you've got 45 minutes of new material, but nobody knows what went into those 9 months of you traveling around trying to get it to where it is now.
100%.
So now you trust it, but that's. I don't think that most people. We cover this ground a lot here, but I don't think that most people understand that what goes into a special. Your 9 months for you is you've cleaned it up. You've gotten it efficient. My guess is at one point in your life you didn't do it that fast.
No, certainly not. I mean, my first special was an accumulation of like 5 years of trial and error, and now, like, you know, it's like a year and a half or 1 to 3 years. It's much faster.
What do you have? Do you have a joke that you've been working on the longest? Like, is there one joke in the arsenal that is something that you can cite as something that you've been trying to get right for X amount of time that would seem absurd to the average person?
I have a joke that hasn't made it into anything but always makes me laugh, which is I say, one day my wife said to me, she goes, sometimes I feel you're not happy. And I was like, right. Like, I was never happy. Like, when we met, I wasn't happy. I thought that's what you were into, you know, and I thought that's what you thought was cool about me. I'm unhappy, but I'm hilarious about it, you know. And then we got married, and that was amazing, but like, I'm still not happy. Then we had a child, and that was transcendent, but I'm still not happy. Like, I'm happily married, unhappily alive. And like, that's a fun run because the audience kind of goes through phases of, I would say, like liking me and disliking me and relating and not relating, because it's kind of like a whole journey.
Uh-huh.
You know,
and it's efficient and it's simple and anyone can connect with
and
it.
It's true, and it's a thing. Even if you don't feel that all the time, most likely you might have felt a version of that.
What has been the most fun film experience that you have had? Like, just fun in doing it. Let's throw Billions in there, even though it's not film.
Sure.
But Pop Star,
or Orange is the New
Trainwreck.
Black, or Trainwreck, or Man Called Otto. My own films, Sleepwalk with Me I wrote and directed, and then Don't Think Twice, I wrote and directed, and I'm about to write and direct one soon. I can't really talk about it yet, but that's like a thing I've been working on.
You're embargoing it right here. This is the place for news breaking, sir. This is the place where you have to give people a little more.
I don't think
it's a big secret. You're embargoing. You can't talk about it yet. It's under wraps.
Yeah, but it would be disingenuous if I said I wasn't working on it, because I'm being completely honest. But I know there's too many people involved. It's like moving parts. But I think the most fun I had working a movie was Don't Think Twice. It was Keegan-Michael Key, Gillian Jacobs, Chris Gethard, Tammy Sager, Kate McCucci, and we played an improv group called The Commune, where we all get to audition for Saturday Night Live. It's called Weekend Live in the movie. And then Keegan, our best friend, his character gets cast and the rest of us don't. And it's sort of about what happens in life when you realize not everybody gets what everyone else gets. Life isn't fair in that way. And the reason it was the most fun was that I felt like it was the sum total of all these things that I'd been working on for a long time. Like my first exposure to comedy was in an improv group in college. And so I did that for a bunch of years. And I'd always wanted to write and direct movies. And I got really lucky where Keegan and Chris and Gillian and Kate and Tammy were all just game for finding this movie and going for it and improvising and taking chances. And that I would say that was the most satisfying. And then on my first movie, it was just hard because it's really hard to direct your first movie, like really hard. I mean, because there's no training for it. I mean, you can go to school, but it's like it doesn't really train you to teach to direct a movie.
When I've talked to directors about this, the seasoned directors, what they say is the director's just the place where all the problems go.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the same for CEOs. CEOs say the same thing, like where you think they have so much power, what you want is to have all the power, and it's just where all the problems go. It's all the responsibility.
Right. But then what's interesting is on Don't Think Twice, what you're saying is building into sort of my own understanding of it is you enjoy the problems because it's all part of this vision you had for the movie in the first place. And so when someone's poking holes in it and saying, what are we going to do? We don't have a location for this. Your brain actually solves that because when you envisioned the movie, you didn't just envision one set location or one group of characters. You actually envisioned what the themes of the movie are. So you're probably the only person who's able to actually kind of roll with the punches on it.
In terms of career achievement, where you feel best about doing something, where does this one rank? Closing out the touring of your one-man tour at Carnegie Hall.
Like, where does the movie rank?
No, just the feeling of your most fulfilled emotional moments about you finally getting to somewhere with a vision of yours. Yeah. When I say the specifics of you performing a one-man show and it being Carnegie Hall, I would assume there's some fulfillment in that. Do I have it wrong? Is it not on the high end of greatest achievements you felt that are fulfilling?
That was fulfilling, but it's funny, for reasons that I've not registered until you mentioned it. That was the end of My Girlfriend's Boyfriend show, which I ran in New York for about 6 months off Broadway, and then we did the final show at Carnegie Hall, and then I handed out ice cream in the street afterwards to all the people who came, like in kind of old-fashioned ice cream hats and all this kind of stuff, and it was all kind of an homage to Andy Kaufman, who kind of did a similar thing like years and years.
And you look the part. You look like
I look like an ice cream scooper,
soda jerk from the 1950s.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, it was, in hindsight, it was very meaningful because my parents came to the show. And they don't always come to my shows. They came to that one, and my dad did see it registered to him. I think he kind of got it because he grew up in an Italian neighborhood in Bushwick, Brooklyn, in the 50s, and so the idea of his son performing at Carnegie Hall and then, handing out ice cream in the street afterwards, like I think that made sense in an achievement prism through that prism.
So it's not the Carnegie Hall part of it. It's not the idea that it's your dad seeing you give out ice cream in the streets and sort of see that his son was doing what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Like that's
yeah. And I'm not even making that connection until now. I mean, I think so much of the stuff is later. As you don't know what you're experiencing when you're experiencing. You just later you look back and go, oh, that was actually meaningful. Because of course I didn't even know that. 15 years later, he would have a stroke, and I would never be able to connect with him in the way that I was connecting with him in that era.
Not just that era, but over that specific thing, right?
Yeah.
That's not just seeing your son happy. That's seeing your son's dreams come true.
That's right,
when you're making the specific point of saying they didn't come to all my things, but on that one, they're seeing me outside of Carnegie Hall selling or giving out ice cream in the street. Like, whatever doubt there was around your choices once upon a time can't be doubted from like wherever it is that it was unsafe to tell you, felt unsafe to tell you to chase laughter, to pay for things.
That's right.
A father would be proud there, would love that his son is happy.
Yeah.
It makes sense that you would look at it that way now and then.
Yeah.
But it escaped you in the moment.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Why would that be, though? I would think that at our most joyous moments, we would feel joy. We wouldn't need necessarily the perspective of, and then my dad had a stroke, especially if you're coming from, I had a tumor when I was 20, and so I've had my life altered in how present I am because everything reminds me that time is short.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get bogged down in logistics in the moment. Like, do we have enough ice cream?
That's what happens, though, right? Like life happens. That's always getting in the way of doing.
Yeah.
Do I have enough ice cream? Is a funny way to look at because that I don't know where because I asked you the question about where it ranks because I would think it would be personal fulfillment, but you're turning it around and you're making it about a connection with your dad and other things that don't have.
Yeah.
I just think Carnegie Hall, something you made. Widely critically acclaimed, totally yours, I would think that would feel like joy and achievement in the moment somehow. Like it doesn't mean that your joy, like there's nothing quite like the laugh, right? You get the laugh from the audience. It's instantaneous. It's joyous. You do not have to question it. Everything else gets complicated. It gets murky to make.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I have to say, like I did 2 shows on Broadway. I did a show called The New One in 2018 at the Court Theater. And then at the Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center, I did The Old Man in the Pool in 2022. And those were so hard at the time. But in hindsight, I'm so glad I did them because so many people will come up to me and say, oh, I saw you at Lincoln Center. I saw, and it connected to me in this way, or I was just having a kid at the time, or we were trying to have a kid, and you end up like accidentally falling into people's personal story of their whole lives. I mean, that's the thing that's interesting about these shows is like by accident, I ended up cataloging like 20 years of my life. And so I have fans from 20 years ago who go, oh, when you wrote Two Drink Mike about being single, like I was single. When you wrote My Girlfriend's Boyfriend about falling in love, that's when I fell in love and got married. And, when you talked about having a kid with The New One, that's when I had a kid. And now that you're talking about your dad being in the final years of his life, my parents are in that too, and so it's pretty intense. Like,
They've come along with you, and it's a community of strangers. You were talking about the intimacy of just making strangers laugh with personal connection.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about doing it over a lifetime.
Yeah, and it's deep. It's deep. You know, you feel like they feel like they know you, but the inverse is you feel like you know them too.
They cease being strangers.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's what I've noticed. I've done a radio show for a little over 20 years. And when I meet our fans and they start to tell us the story of however it is that they came to love our show, there are certain things I can then immediately know about them because I've met so many of them.
Makes perfect sense.
And it's wonderful. Like, it's a wonderful connection to have because otherwise you're just speaking into a microphone. At least in part, these people do know you because they know your work. They know the podcast is extra intimate, right? They get to see more of you. It's sprawling. It's less sculpted. That's the most intimate thing that you do, right?
Yeah.
It also creates the most intimate audience. Well,
you're in people's ears,
but they're not. They feel less like strangers than someone who perhaps consumes your work another way. Because the podcast has changed the entirety of the comedy business. Like you've adapted well, but what you've seen happen to the comedy business over the last 15 years with the podcast, you like that, right? You view it favorably because it's altered things.
I think it's been good for comedy absolutely.
You guys have all learned that you can all do radio shows. That's all. That's all that happened.
That's
like
right.
you guys allowed other people to do the radio,
That's right.
and
That's right.
Because you guys have thoughts over the course of a day. You could sit down in front of a microphone in front of an hour, and it might not be your special or your show, but you could entertain people for an hour if you turned it on based on just your life experience and everything else that you've done over 20 years.
No, it's been really interesting. Because I sort of swore I would never do a podcast, do a radio show. Not because I don't love radio. I actually love podcasts. I love radio. But because I always thought there's a lack of control. Like, you can't sculpt it. You can try, but you can't sculpt it week over week over week. You just have to let it fly, and what goes into the episode goes into the episode. And so in that way, it is more intimate. It's more vulnerable.
Was there anything other than the pandemic that made you realize, why would I call into Bob and Tom when I could just be Bob and Tom?
Well, yeah, I should reference Bob and Tom because that was, when I was starting out, my first break was in radio. It was going on Bob and Tom's show in Indianapolis, which was syndicated all over the place. And doing jokes and then traveling around the country, and people would show up to hear me do those jokes or tell those stories. And so that was extraordinarily intimate, and they gave me my own call-in segment on the show. I called my secret public journal, and so that was a huge break. But I think I really always resisted being a radio host or a podcast host because it honestly felt unwieldy. Like, if you think about how many hours you've been on the radio, you couldn't even attempt to listen to those hours.
No, it is unwieldy.
It's outrageous.
But where you come from, though, is so sculpted. Like, I'm grateful that no comedians figured out earlier that you guys could do this because you could absolutely very easily, almost any of you who are good at what you do, could sit in front of a microphone for 3 hours a day. Let's say sports is the place you decided to do this, and be funny around sports and the daily news that sports is giving you, because you guys are endless content fountains. Like, you guys, there are no comedians that I've talked to away from the microphone, away from performing, who aren't interesting. You guys are all, you're all spending so much time thinking about life that you have interesting thoughts about 1,000 different things. Most people don't.
No, it's true. A good example of that too is Ron Bennington, who I see at the Comedy Cellar sometimes over the years, and was a radio personality for years and years and years. That's how I knew him. I didn't even know he was a stand-up, and then a few years ago I saw him at the Cellar. I go, this guy's a killer. I said, he's unbelievable. But yeah, so there's a lot of crossover.
I hope you know that the comedians also know you're a killer, right? Because I was impressed when Sam Morrill just went to watch a show of yours from the back, and he was just sort of saying the guy's a killer.
Oh, that's nice.
But what you were doing, you're one of them, correct? Like you grind so much that other comedians notice how much you care about being good on stage.
I appreciate you saying that. I think so. It's like anything. Some days you go, yeah, I'm one of the people. And then other days you go, look at all those people. They're doing a great job. You know what I mean?
And then you're doing a karate stance and fighting a jackal in your sleep.
It's a cycle. It is.
Yeah, tonight, 12 hours from now, you're like, what? It wasn't just a jackal, though. It was some other insect that became a jackal, correct? Is what it was?
Hovering insect jackal.
Yeah.
But Sam, of course, Sam is brilliant. I mean, a lot of these young comics are great. I was watching Joe List the other night. He's a riot.
And you're embracing the newcomers, yes, because it's very easy in a competitive field to get threatened by all those things, no matter how confident you are, and no matter how successful you are, because there are a whole lot of young people doing it differently now too. There are any number of people your age who are lamenting or railing against the podcast.
Oh yes, certainly. And the Comedy Cellar in New York is amazing for that, because they really do. They do give a lot of comics a shot. That's where I found. Well, it's where I met Sam Morrell. It's where I saw Ethan Simmons Patterson and Matty Weiner and Robbie Hoffman and a lot of these young comics who are exploding right now.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate the work. The Good Life is the name of the special on Netflix. What do you want people to know about that?
The Good Life is about my dad and how he had a stroke, and I tried to find the humor in that. And I think that if people laugh, then it's a success.
How hard was it to find the humor in that?
It took a couple of years.
I mean, it seems
it's not easy.
It seems like there's a degree of difficulty on making some of that funny and wringing 45 minutes of material out of grief.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, it was a lot of times with things that are hard, it's like finding one joke that works, that breaks the audience open. Because for that one, it was, I couldn't get an audience to laugh about my dad's stroke, believe it or not, in the early onset of it. And then I one day I said this joke. I go, my dad had a stroke, and it's devastating, but if I'm being honest, it has calmed him down. It's like when I was younger, he'd be like, God damn it, I'm eating pretzels. And now he's like, pretzels. I can't say that's not a little better.
If people want tickets and tour dates, I'd normally send them to your website, but I don't know how to spell how it is that you spell your website.
Birbigs.com, Birbiglia.com.
All right. So do that more slowly for the people. We'll put it on the screen as well.
Birbigs.com.
I was afraid to mispronounce it. I'm sorry to turn you into a bit of a piano bar where I just tell you to do the thing there to promote your thing.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for doing it. I appreciate it.
Thanks.